Ah, Miss Croft, it's been a while. 3.5 years ago, I dedicated a whole marathon to the oh-so-beloved Tomb Raider series. In that marathon, I covered the original PlayStation classics, well, one of them to be exact, the others were first impressions, and I understand why some of you thought I should have dedicated more time to the other PlayStation games. I've even had a couple people say to me that Tomb Raider Chronicles gets much better as the game goes on. One day I'll do looking back at videos for each of them. Hell, I've already gone back to Tomb Raider 2 fully, but the others I will retread in due time. Anyway, I still think the old school Tomb Raider games are a bit too archaic nowadays to be immensely enjoyed by newcomers such as myself, and while I think there are actually a couple of legitimately good games out there, they're not ones I'll frequently go back to multiple times. I also covered the Angel of Darkness in the marathon and pretty much stated that it's a buggy, awkward snorefest to play through and it's not worth anybody's time. Though I was surprised to see how many people actually like this game. For all of the game's faults, it was mainly the story that kept them interested, and yeah, I can see that. It does have an intriguing premise, but in my opinion, it gets way too complicated by the end of the game to the point where I don't care anymore. And this is coming from someone who loves the Metal Gear Solid series. The Tomb Raider Crystal Dynamics trilogy was what got my attention, and I stand by when I say that anybody who's new to the Tomb Raider series should play these games first. I adore Tomb Raider Anniversary and is still my personal favorite in the series, and even though I thought Tomb Raider Underworld was the weakest in the trilogy, it's still a good game in its own right. The last game in the marathon was the 2013 reboot with a new Lara Croft that was very likable and made you want to see her get out of Yamatai alive, and the game had a more serious tone. But the story was all sorts of generic, the replay value wasn't that high once you finished the game, and the side characters were either dipshits or just plain jackasses. To my surprise, these are some of my most viewed videos on my channel. In fact, the Angel of Darkness review is my most viewed video ever. It's a surprise to me because for one thing, while I enjoy some of the games, I'm not really a die-hard Tomb Raider fan, and I don't actually think my Angel of Darkness review is my best work. I also definitely could have done better when talking about the PS1 sequels, even if it meant losing my sanity from all the cryptic puzzle solving and dedicating long hours to them. The thing is, I don't like having to keep resorting to a guide all the time, and I felt like the PlayStation Tomb Raider games constantly begged me to do so, which I had to do with the original Tomb Raider and the Angel of Darkness because those were the only games I was going to complete at the time, and continuously looking at what to do not only makes me feel stupid, it's also monotonous. So after the reboot and another spin-off called Lara Croft and the Temple of Osiris, I will get to that game too someday, we now have our latest entry in the Tomb Raider lineup, Rise of the Tomb Raider, a direct sequel to the 2013 reboot. It was actually first released back in late 2015, but it was a Microsoft-only product at the time, meaning you can only get it on the Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PC. This, not surprisingly, created a lot of angry PlayStation Tomb Raider fans, and they shouted and demanded for it to be brought over to the PS4 as well.
I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty peeved myself that it didn't come over to the PlayStation at the time, but I kept getting requests left and right wondering when I was going to review Rise of the Tomb Raider. However, I didn't want to buy an Xbox One because so far there are very few games I'm interested in, but I also didn't want to buy the inferior version on the 360, and I've said countless times in YouTube comments and on my Twitter page that I would never review this game unless it came to the PS4. Well, here it is.
Nearly a year later since its initial release, Rise of the Tomb Raider made its way to the PlayStation 4, just in time to celebrate Tomb Raider's 20th anniversary. 20 whole years of Tomb Raider. We began with grid-based adventure games starring a woman with pointy boobs, to games with enormous scale, a faster pace, tighter controls, and an action movie feel. The PS4 version of Rise of the Tomb Raider comes with all the DLC included, and this neat little art book showing the many years of Tomb Raider. But let's take a look at the actual game itself, shall we? Spoilers are plenty, folks, so skip to this point in the video if you want to wait until you complete the game. It's been about a year since the events of the first game, and Lara's still trying to figure out what happened in Yamatai. So she looks through her late father's research and finds out about the lost city of Katesh, which is meant to be the holding place for the Divine Source, an artifact that's told to grant immortality. Before Lara sets off, she's approached by Richard Croft's former girlfriend called Anna after Amelia Croft divorced him, and she warns her that this expedition was what drove her father to kill himself. Obviously, Lara still wants to go and find the secret, so she goes to Syria to investigate the Prophet of Constantinople's tomb, which is hoped to lead her to Katesh. She succeeds to find the Prophet's coffin, but sees that it's empty upon opening it up, which especially displeases our new villains of the game called Trinity, a military organization that search and study the supernatural, and are led by their leader Constantine. Actually, there was sort of a clue about Trinity in the first game when you collected all the many GPS caches, so keeping something like this hidden must mean that these guys are a major threat. But who exactly are Trinity? They're just assholes. No if, why, and or how, they're just assholes. It's revealed early on that Anna's secretly working for Trinity and turns out to be Constantine's sister, as well as containing a severe illness that'll cause her to die with only a matter of time, and their only hope is to find the divine source and cure her. But for some reason, we need to have this rivalry between them and Lara. Wouldn't it have been so much easier if Trinity and Lara worked together to find the lost city? And Constantine and Anna seem to have a legit reason for finding immortality, so why is Lara trying to stop them? Oh, because God told them to spill blood if it means obtaining the secret? First of all, I'm pretty sure one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not kill, so why is mass murder even being considered an option? And secondly, I think there could have been a million other ways to sort this out. Maybe Lara, Anna, and Constantine could have all been curious about Richard Croft's findings and share information. Maybe Constantine could have offered Lara to keep whatever she found as long as Anna was cured. Perhaps Lara could have convinced them that killing people won't get them any closer to finding the divine source. There was no need whatsoever for an evil organization. Trinity are just villains because the game demands villains. Doesn't care how or why it's done, we just need some sort of conflict no matter how little sense it makes. And this is one of my biggest problems with Rise of the Tomb Raider. Anyway, in the Prophet's tomb, Lara notices a symbol that's linked to one of her father's books, but a Trinity assassin breaks into her home and steals the book, and she decides to give chase in Siberia with Jonah from the first game, now rocking an afro. However, while climbing a large snowy mountain, the two get separated from an avalanche and Lara is left on her own. Lara attempts to retrieve the book, but gets caught and witnesses Anna's betrayal and gets thrown in a jail cell along with a man named Jacob. Lara breaks both of them out and escapes the camp, and we eventually see that Jacob's the leader of a group of followers of the Constantinople prophet called the Remnant, along with his daughter Sophia. As Lara aids them in their resistance against Trinity, Jacob tells her that the divine source does in fact exist, but it's not what she thinks it is. That still doesn't stop Lara though, and she manages to locate the Atlas, which is a map of Katesh, and in due time, Jonah finds her again but doesn't take too long to be captured by Trinity with the Atlas in hand and needs to be saved. The rescue fails anyway, because Constantine stabs him once you reach him, so we take him to Jacob where he instantly heals him. So, Lara immediately wonders how the hell he just performed a miracle that even Jesus would have raised an eyebrow at, and Jacob unveils himself as the prophet, which doesn't mean a whole lot aside from being immortal since that idea is never taken further. Oh well, Jacob opens up a secret path that leads to the city of Katesh, but is guarded by the Deathless Ones, and despite their name, they're defeated just as easily as regular goons. Once Lara passes through them, she reads the journals of a Trinity agent that says the divine source does indeed grant immortality, but whoever uses it is forced to protect the divine source for all eternity, and that's exactly what the Deathless Ones have become. Lara tries to reach the heart of the city where the divine source is, but is bombarded with Deathless Ones until the Remnant arrive and Sophia orders an attack. And while getting there, she faces against Constantine and his helicopter, as well as the man himself, and pierces an arrow into his throat. And by the way, these are the only boss fights in the entire game. And while the helicopter can be a challenge because of the swarm of enemies that arrive after each successful blow, the stealth battle against Constantine afterwards is pathetically simple since he's very easily distracted. Anyway, following this, Lara tries to stop Anna from getting to the divine source, but makes it too late. However, she just manages to snatch it away and breaks it so that it can't do any more harm. Doing so kills all of the Deathless Ones and causes Jacob to no longer be immortal and die right on the spot after Anna shot him a few times beforehand. All is good and Sophia is now placed in charge of the remnants while Lara sets off for another adventure along with a healthy Jonah and to stop whatever plans Trinity has up their sleeves. Then, during a post-credit scene, we see Lara and Anna leaving Russia, where Anna explains that Richard Croft didn't commit suicide but was assassinated by Trinity. Yeesh, everyone's trying to take credit for killing him. But before Anna could reveal anything else, she gets shot by a sniper who asks his boss if he should kill Lara as well, but is told to leave her alone for the time being. Okay, the story overall in my opinion is only slightly better than the first games, but man do I have some problems. Well, like I already mentioned before, there was absolutely no reason for Anna and Constantine to go against Lara when I'm sure they would have been more than capable to help each other out. The whole thing about Jacob being the prophet doesn't go anywhere, and while the side characters are certainly more developed than in the first game, thank God there's no Reyes anymore, it's still not enough to make me interested. Again, it's Lara who's the most fleshed out of the bunch, and I do like that she's become a little more badass and wisecracking than before, and I don't have to worry as much about protecting her. It's not quite the Lara Croft we know and love, but it's getting there. Camilla Ludington reprises her role as the famous explorer, but I'll be frank, I don't think her performance is as good as it was in the reboot. During cutscenes, her acting's what I expect it to be, but during gameplay, she sounds almost completely bored and just reads her lines. I guess being asked to scream and shout a lot's worn her out.
So, alright, I didn't think the story was that spectacular, but what about the gameplay? This is a reborn Lara Croft going on new adventures. We've seen Lara the Survivor, now it's time for Lara the Adventurer, so I'm expecting to be going all around the world again, scaling up all sorts of temples and catacombs and dealing with the supernatural. Unfortunately, like going into Arkham Origins straight after Arkham City, there's not much new I can add from my review of the Tomb Raider reboot, and as a result, it feels extremely similar.
Basically everything you've seen in the last game has made a return, such as shooting from an over-the-shoulder perspective, a fully open world to explore, and character upgrades you can buy from earning experience points, which I'm glad has made a return as that was one of my favorite things about the reboot, though now the amount of upgrades is ridiculous. My favorite ones include zooming in with a bow and automatically aiming at an enemy's head, and that can eventually be used to kill up to 3 enemies at a time. It's awesome, and it makes stealth sections and combat overall a ton easier. Somehow Lara's managed to lose all of her upgrades and weapons from the first game, so that means we have to get them all back. And this introduces a new mechanic to the Tomb Raider series, crafting. By collecting a certain number of materials scattered around the world, you can make special ammunition for your weapons such as fire, poison, and explosive arrows, or make your own weapons like turning an enemy's radio into a proximity mine or a simple Molotov to roast a group of enemies. It's a neat idea, but since I'm somewhat of an explorative type of gamer, I almost never run out of materials to make these things, especially when I make my own arrows when I'm nearly out. Salvage is once again used to upgrade your weapon's attributes, however, it's not as plentiful as last time, so I doubt you'll be able to fully upgrade a weapon by the time you finish the story. Not to mention that there are loads of different models of the same weapon, and some have their own upgrades, so it's going to take quite a while before you completely beef out every single weapon in the game. And before anyone asks, no, you still don't get Lara's iconic dual pistols in this game. In the campsites, you can also change Lara into various outfits where some of them have different abilities, like sustaining damage or occasionally not taking ammo away when using certain weapons. You can even wear a reimagined Antarctica outfit from Tomb Raider 3, and some of these other outfits are pretty cool too, but the odd couple make you look freaking ridiculous. I think one of the more bizarre outfits is wearing deerskin that squelches blood from your footsteps. That's gross. Relics and documents also come back to give you more fluff to the Siberian area, but now I wish we could listen to these audio tapes lying around while on the move, because trust me, it's not fun at all watching a static screen and you can read much faster than the person speaking. Also located around the world are coin caches that are hidden in certain spots and can be located more easily by translating the monolith in the area, assuming your language skills are at a high enough level. Who knew that you could learn an entirely new language just by looking at stuff? Anyway, the only purpose for coin caches are to pay for these incredibly expensive perks for Lara's tools and weapons in this one spot in the whole game. There's thankfully still a fast travel option in the campsites if you ever need to come back here, but I would have liked more of these shops spread around. If the Resident Evil 4 merchant can do it, I don't see why these guys can't. Speaking of Lara's tools though, the only new one is the wire spool, which pretty much acts like the grappling hook from the Tomb Raider trilogy, so I guess it's not necessarily new, it was just absent for a while. Siberia as a whole is pretty big, but at least Lara's sprinting ability makes a comeback. Again. And this is sort of a nitpick I have, but I don't like how using survival instincts to scan your surroundings like Batman's detective mode is on the R3 button, because it's not the most comfortable place to put it, and considering how often you'll likely use it, this became an issue for my right thumb. In the first game, it was put on the L1 button, which was far more relaxing for my hands, so why did they change it? So the gameplay as a whole still has a big emphasis on shooting and fighting collectibles, and the tombs you come across are once again merely optional, which I could excuse with the first game because it was all about getting Lara out of Yamatai, but since Lara's made her own adventure this time, I really don't see why the tombs have to be optional again. The game's called Rise of the Tomb Raider, for crying out loud. Besides, the tombs in this game are nowhere near as good as last time because, I'm not kidding, the puzzles all involve shooting an arrow with a rope attached and tying it to something. Physics are still the major focus of these tombs and they can sometimes be a challenge, but the puzzle variety is laughably small and I definitely don't feel as rewarded as before. The only thing that's cool about them is that you get a permanent upgrade for Lara instead of a bunch of experience points. And just when you thought this game didn't have enough upgrades to give you, there are also side quests to complete. Yeah, side quests in a Tomb Raider game. You come across different Remnant members along your travels or by searching through your map, and most of the time they ask you to perform menial tasks for new outfits, tools, and weapon modifications, like shoot these things, or collect these things, or catch some chickens and throw them into a coop. Am I playing Tomb Raider or Ocarina of Time? Let's see if you can fly now, you feathered bastard. Strangely, the second half of the game doesn't have any side quests at all for you to do, so that makes me wonder what was even the point of including side quests to begin with. It's like halfway through, Crystal Dynamics were thinking to themselves, yeah, this was a dumb idea, scrap the whole thing, but leave the ones we spent minutes making. Graphically, at least, Rise of the Tomb Raider is damn gorgeous on the PS4. Lara herself looks as amazing as ever, especially with the increased hair physics. The environments of Russia and even Syria from the beginning are a pretty sight, and some of the cutscenes look absolutely incredible. Although there are a few iffy character models, mainly some of the optional Remnant members you can activate side quests for. But other than that, there's also tons of debris and broken monumental pieces falling down because, like last time, this game still hates Lara Croft. She's plunging herself close to death at every turn, and I wonder just how much Lara can really take before saying to herself, you know what, maybe this isn't worth it. Dad was a nut job, I'm going home. Want to play a drinking game? Take a shot every time Lara says that she's gotta do something, whether it be to solve a puzzle or do some heavy climbing. You will start hallucinating Lara Crofts of the past in a modern Tomb Raider game. Okay, actually there are classic skins in the game already, but still it can be annoying every time she says it. The classic Tomb Raider skins consist of the traditional tank top and shorts from Tomb Raider 2, the Tibetan outfit from Tomb Raider 2, the catsuit from Tomb Raider Chronicles, Lara's Angel of Darkness outfit, and of course the Lara Croft from the very first Tomb Raider where Crystal Dynamics chose her gym clothes for some reason, and wait a minute, she doesn't have spiky boobs anymore, that's not right. Oh well, but surprisingly I think my favorite of the classic skins would have to be the Angel of Darkness one. I don't think it actually fits too badly with a modern Tomb Raider game. I probably won't play with the PS1 skins too often, they stick out like a sore thumb. I guess all that's left to discuss is Rise of the Tomb Raiders DLC. First off, aside from new tombs, we also have the Baba Yaga Temple of the Witch side quest that you eventually come across in the story, where you help this woman named Nadia find her missing grandfather who's supposedly been taken away by the wicked witch that roams around these parts. Obviously, Lara thinks it's just a myth, but while exploring, Nadia may not have been too far off the map, as Lara starts hallucinating from the pollen on the witch's flowers and begins seeing weird imagery like her father back from the dead and in due time has to fend off against these demon hounds and a giant house with legs. So Lara and Nadia need to create an antidote to make them immune to the pollen and take on the witch herself in a boss fight, which is pretty basic and honestly not a very exciting battle. You just drag her close to one of her exploding cauldrons and do that a few more times. There's an entirely different expedition in the main menu called Cold Darkness, where Trinity have unintentionally released a toxin that turns the enemies you've been facing into zombies that can't see but can hear things, and yeah, there are zombies in a Tomb Raider game now. So you need to channel the virus from 3 towers into the central tower, cause it to explode, and hopefully burn the toxin. The catch is that you have to channel the towers through extraordinarily contrived instructions read out by Nadia, otherwise you'll set the alarms off, attracting a horde of zombies. And trust me, you will fail a couple of times because the instructions can sometimes be very confusing and way too technical for a video game, at least in my case. But anyway, once the central tower blows up, you just escape with Nadia and Sophia via helicopter, and that's that. The PS4 version also has 2 new bits of DLC, both taking place in Lara's mansion, called Blood Ties and Lara's Nightmare. Yes, you heard me right, Tomb Raider fans, Croft Manor has returned for you to explore. The story of Blood Ties involves Lara's uncle Atlas claiming that he is the rightful owner of the estate, unless Lara can find proof that she does. Croft Manor looks a lot more dank than it used to, but I guess it just needs another game to get some patchwork done. Blood Ties is a massive love letter to the fans, filling in all sorts of references to the past games, mainly Tomb Raider 2 for some reason. You can find a dragon statue where Lara mentions how it belonged to the Temple of Zion and she should visit there sometime. You can play the original mansion music on the gramophone, and they even make fun of how Winston the butler always got locked in the freezer by players.
Later in the day, she set a trap for me. In the walk-in freezer, of all places. Before I knew what was happening, I found myself locked inside. Mrs. Sheffield discovered me an hour later, shivering and somewhat peeved.
The puzzles and sense of discovery in Blood Ties are surprisingly way better than they are in the main campaign, forcing you to search every nook and cranny for anything interactive. And you even have to look through everything you found to find your next way forward. I feel like I'm playing a Tomb Raider game again. In fact, I may actually like this small bit of DLC more than the story mode. Yes, it is unfortunately only around half an hour long if you know where to go, but this was really enjoyable for what it was. As for Lara's Nightmare, however, I think this is the worst of the extra DLC missions. Judging from the title, I at first thought it was going to be a remake of the Nightmare in Vegas level from the expansion pack of Tomb Raider 2 called Golden Mask. But it really involves Lara dreaming about Uncle Atlas not willing to give her the manor, so she has to fight an army of zombies and search for 3 demonic skulls and take on the Master Skull afterwards. Finding the 3 skulls can be both boring and a big pain in the ass, because every time you load the mission up, they're each in different places around the manor, so that means a lot of backtracking and careful looking. And worst of all, there are oftentimes cheap deaths from zombies trapping you in a corner or blowing you up, and if you die, you have to start the whole mission again. Like Blood Ties, this can take up to half an hour if you're struggling to find the skulls, and there are no checkpoints whatsoever. So this undeniably caused me to rage quit when I made it all the way to the Master Skull and couldn't escape a group of zombies. It's completely unfair. You can also create your own expeditions to send to other players around the world, but it's only just choosing certain missions for them to do in a row, which is alright, but it's not particularly worth replaying. I suppose what you could do to spice things up a bit with all the extra missions and story chapters is to use cards that you earn by performing tasks, and by earning enough points in the game or using real-world money to buy a deck. Each card has a different type of boost or handicap to make the level easier or harder, depending on how you want it, such as zombies in Cold Darkness not able to be hurt by fire. It's not too much incentive to replay expeditions, but it's something in case you feel like it.
Phew, and that's Rise of the Tomb Raider, ladies and gentlemen, so do you see what I mean when I say that it doesn't really add much to what we've already seen?
Even before Rise of the Tomb Raider came out, I was pretty worried about it being much of the same as the first game, and I'm sadly not too far off. I do like the variety of options with the combat, which sort of reminds me of the Phantom Pain, but I don't think that should have been the center of attention for a Tomb Raider game. I just don't get why the game's treated like it's all about survival again, even though we've already gone past that with Lara's character. I think there should have been more priority on adding tombs to the story instead of letting the players decide whether they actually want to or not. And I thought it was sort of going that way when traveling in Syria at the beginning, but it just drops the idea of tombs in the story immediately after that. The side quests and bunch of collectibles are all fairly redundant too, and apparently it can take up to 40 hours to 100% the game, but as far as I'm aware, there's no reward for it at all. And what would be the point anyway, when we've already got a cliffhanger after the credits? And if you decide to collect as many trinkets as you can before moving on to the story, the pacing in the first half of the game is painfully slow, and it doesn't really pick up until the second half where you help the Remnant fend off against oncoming Trinity soldiers. Honestly, I just don't believe Rise of the Tomb Raider made quite as big of a leap as a sequel compared to what Tomb Raider 2 did back in 1997. At most, Rise of the Tomb Raider is a perfectly functional survival shooter that has its moments of fun, but as a Tomb Raider game, it is a little disappointing to me. And it didn't sell all that well compared to the first game, so I can only hope that by the time there's a third Tomb Raider entry in the rebooted series, Crystal Dynamics will find something that really works, and I wish them luck that they eventually do.
But who knows how long that'll be, so in the meantime I'll try and go over some Tomb Raider spin-offs before the next main entry arrives. Hope to see you again soon, Lara Croft. And that, ladies and gentlemen, marks the beginning of the 2017 reviews. I'm sorry I haven't made a lot of videos during 2016, but I'm sure you'll be seeing more frequent videos from now on. Next up in my review list, though, is a rather obscure Japanese game that some of you will have heard of, but others might not be in the know about. It's a game called Catherine for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. See you guys then.